8.4 dividing by a decimal. Before we get into that, one of the important things about the techniques here is if we had something like 4 divided by 5, another way in which we can write that is 4 over 5. So remember the fraction line, the fraction bar. Another way to think about that is it means divided by. And one of the other things that we can do with fractions is remember we can form equivalent fractions. So we know that 4 over 5 is going to equal 40 over 50. And it's also going to be the same as 4,000 over 5,000. So 4/5 is the same as 40 over 50, is the same as 4,000 over 5,000, is the same as 4 divided by 5. So to divide by a decimal, the first thing we're going to do is rewrite the division as a fraction. We check what we need to multiply the denominator of the fraction by to turn it into a whole number. So it might be 10, 100, or 1,000. Once we've got that number, we need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by this. So what we're trying to do is to form an equivalent fraction in the same way that I've done with these three. But we want the denominator to be a whole number. Then change the sum back into a division. So we'll go from a division, where we're dividing by a decimal, into a fraction with the denominator as a whole number, and then we'll go back to the division and actually work it out. And the answer that we get is our answer. We don't need to divide back again or anything like that. The answer is our answer. Example 6, evaluate the following. If the answers are not exact, give your answer to 2 decimal places. So let's say the first thing we need to do then is write this as a fraction. So 8 divided by 0.02. Now to get 0.02 into a whole number, we need to multiply the bottom by 100. So we're moving the decimal place twice. If we multiply the bottom number by 100, we need to also multiply the top number by 100. And what we're left with is 800 over 2. 800 over 2 means 800 divided by 2, so we're going to change it back into the division. 2 into 8 goes 4 times, 2 into 0 goes 0 times, and 4 into 0 goes 0 times. So the answer then is 400. Now this might seem like a really big number, especially whenever we started off with the number 8. But remember, what we're asking is how many 0.02s there are in 8. So that's what a division is. So whenever we're dividing by a decimal, the answer is always much bigger. Example B, 0.03 divided by 0.5. So the first thing we need to do is we need to write it as a fraction, 0.03 over 0.5. What we want, remember, is the denominator to be a whole number. We don't really care about the numerator because we can divide a decimal by a whole number. We just can't divide by a decimal, so we need to change the bottom number into a whole number. And to do that, we need to get from 5 and multiply it by 10. So if we multiply the bottom by 10, we also need to multiply the top by 10. And that's going to give us 0.3 over 5. So now we can change back into a division. So 0.3 divided by 5. I'm going to put in an extra 0. So 5 into 0 doesn't go. Put them into decimal point so that it lines up with the decimal in the question. 5 into 3 doesn't go. I'm going to carry it over. And then 5 into 30 goes 6 times. So the answer is 0.06. Example C, 0.65 divided by 0.7. So the first thing we need to do is write that as a fraction. 0.65 over 0.7. We need the denominator to be a whole number, so we need to multiply by 10. And if we do that, we also need to multiply the top by 10. And we'll get 6.5 over 7. So let's divide that out. 6.5 divided by 7. Now I'm going to put in an extra couple of decimal places. Now remember, the question said we needed to give our answers to 2 decimal places if it wasn't exact, which means then in our working out we need to go to 3 decimal places to check for a rounding. So 7 into 6 doesn't go. We'll put 0 down and carry our 6. I'm going to line up the decimal points. Then 7 into 65 goes 9 times with 2 left over. 7 into 20 goes twice with 6 left over. And 7 into 60 goes 8 times. And we don't really care about the remainder after that. So our answer to 3 decimal places is 0.928. But we're only going to 2, so I'm going to put the dashed line after the second decimal place. The 8 is bigger than 5, so that means we're going to round up. So the answer then is going to be 0.93. And finally, example D, we've got 1.25 over 0.03. To get 0.03 into a whole number, we need to multiply by 100. So we're going to multiply the numerator by 100. And we're going to have 125 over 3. So we've moved the decimal place twice on the top and the bottom. So let's work that out. 125 divided by 3, and we'll put in 3 extra zeros into the decimal place. So 6 into 1 doesn't, or 3 into 1 doesn't go. 0 and carry a 1. 3 into 12 goes 4 times with no remainder. 3 into 5 goes once with 2 left over, and I'm going to put my decimal point in so that it lines up with the decimal point below. 3 into 20 goes 6 times with 2 left over. 3 into 20 goes 6 times with 2 left over. 3 into 20 goes 6 times. And we don't need to worry about any further decimal places because, again, we're going to 2 decimal places. So we're doing our work to 3 decimal places. So we've got 41.666. I'm going to put the decimal, or the dashed line, after the second decimal place. The 6 after the decimal place is bigger than 5, so that means round up. So then the changer is going to change from a 6 to a 7. So it's 41.67 to 2 decimal places. Note, the numerator can still be a decimal. That just means we're dividing into a decimal, and we've already seen it can do that. And people feel they need to divide the answer by the 10 or the 100 or the 1,000 or whatever it was that we multiplied at the end. We don't need to do that because we've changed both the numerator and the denominator. So they're exactly the same value, they just look different. So we don't need to divide again at the end. The answer to the division is our answer.